There was a time when Katy Perry felt untouchable. Multiple #1 singles, sold-out stadium tours, a public image so carefully constructed over 15 years that it seemed bulletproof. She was the artist who broke Beatles records on the Billboard Hot 100. She was the woman who performed at the Super Bowl halftime show with a giant inflatable shark and turned it into a cultural moment. Whatever criticism came her way, it bounced off. That version of Katy Perry feels very far away right now, because in the spring of 2026, things are falling apart in ways that are hard to look away from. There's not one problem. There's not even 2 or 3 problems. There's a layered collapse happening across her career, her public image, and now, most seriously, her legal standing. And the strange thing is that several of these problems have been building for years. Ruby Rose's Threads post did not start a fire. It dropped a match into something that was already soaked. Let us start with the music, because that is where everything else is supposed to be grounded. A pop star can survive a scandal if the music is undeniable. Katy Perry's most recent album, released in 2024 and titled 143, was not undeniable. It was, by most critical measures, the worst-reviewed album of her career. The singles failed to make a serious impact on the charts. The promotional rollout felt labored, and the decision to work with producer Dr. Luke, a figure at the center of years of controversy, following the highly publicized legal dispute with singer Kesha, triggered a backlash from fans that she never fully recovered from. You can argue about whether that backlash was fair, but it was loud, and it was lasting, and it came from people who had previously been in her corner. Then came the Blue Origin rocket trip in April of 2025. Perry was among the passengers on Jeff Bezos' suborbital flight, and the internet responded with a particular kind of cold mockery, the type reserved for celebrities who seem disconnected from the reality most people live in. The optics were not good. Millions of people are struggling with the cost of living, and here was a pop star floating in zero gravity as a billionaire's passenger. The jokes wrote themselves. More importantly, the image stuck. It added to a growing feeling that Katy Perry had drifted somewhere unreachable. Her split from actor Orlando Bloom in the summer of 2025, after nearly a decade together, added a different kind of attention. The two had a daughter together. Their relationship had been a cornerstone of her public persona for years. When that ended, it fed a tabloid cycle that kept her name in headlines, but not for reasons that help a music career. Then, within months, she was publicly linked to former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They were photographed together at Coachella. They wore matching outfits. They made no attempt to be subtle about it. The internet had opinions, as the internet always does. Her world tour, called the Lifetimes Tour, has genuinely been a commercial success, grossing over $130 million. That number is real, and it matters. It tells you that there is still a fan base willing to spend money on her. But commercial success on a tour is not the same as a healthy public image, and it is not the same as being someone the culture looks at with warmth. You can sell tickets and still be losing the bigger battle. Right now, Katy Perry is selling tickets and losing the bigger battle. And then came April 12th, 2026. That was the Sunday night when Ruby Rose, the Australian model and actress, responded to a social media post mocking Justin Bieber's Coachella headlining set. Perry had taken a light jab at Bieber's performance on her Instagram. A music publication shared it. Rose replied, and her reply was not light. In a public post on Threads, Rose accused Katy Perry of sexually assaulting her at a Melbourne nightclub called Spice Market in 2010. The accusation was specific. It named a location. It named a year. It included physical details. It was not vague, and it was not coded. Rose followed up with more posts explaining why she had stayed silent for 16 years. She described the power dynamic that existed between them at the time. She said Perry had later helped her obtain a United States visa, and that this created a debt of silence she carried for nearly 2 decades. She said she had turned the story into a funny drinking anecdote in a 2011 magazine column because she did not know how else to cope with what had happened. She dared Perry to sue her. She said she had photographs. She said there were witnesses. One day after those posts, Ruby Rose walked into a Melbourne police station and filed a formal report. 2 days after that, Victoria Police confirmed the existence of an active investigation assigned to a specialist unit called SOSIT, the Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse Investigation Team. That confirmation is not nothing. SOSIT is not a generalist department. It handles cases with a specific level of seriousness, staffed by detectives who receive dedicated training for exactly this kind of work. When that unit picks up a case, the machinery that moves is not casual. What makes the legal situation particularly complicated for Perry is the nature of Victorian law. Australia's state of Victoria has no statute of limitations on sexual offenses. An alleged incident from 2010 can be charged today. It can be charged in a decade. There's no clock running out on the prosecution side. That is a different legal landscape than what most Americans are used to thinking about when they imagine old accusations. In Victoria, time does not protect you. Katy Perry's representatives issued a statement calling the allegations categorically false and describing Rose as someone with a documented history of making serious public claims against various individuals that had been repeatedly denied. The language was precise in a way that felt deliberate, the kind of precision that comes from a legal team rather than a publicist. Words like reckless and categorically and well-documented history are chosen carefully when a defamation lawsuit is being considered. But here's the problem with that path. Australia's defamation laws are structured very differently from American ones. In the United States, a public figure trying to sue someone for defamation has to prove actual malice, an enormously difficult standard that almost always protects the person who made the statement. In Australia, the burden shifts. The person making the statement has to prove it was true. That sounds like it favors Perry. But filing a defamation suit in Australia also opens a discovery process, which means both sides have to produce records, communications, and witnesses. That is a risk for everyone involved. If there's anything in Perry's own communications from that period that complicates the narrative her team is putting forward, a lawsuit would surface it. That may be exactly why no lawsuit has been filed as of this recording, despite viral social media posts falsely claiming otherwise. There's also the question of the 2011 magazine column Rose wrote for an Australian publication. In that piece, she described the same night at Spice Market. She did not describe it as an assault. She framed it as a cautionary tale about drinking too much and losing her dignity. She wrote about vomiting on Perry's foot as an embarrassing punchline. That column resurfaced instantly when the accusations went viral, and critics pointed to it as evidence of contradiction. Rose addressed this directly, saying she turned the event into a funny story because she did not know how else to process it, and because Perry's help with her visa created a silence she felt compelled to maintain. That explanation is psychologically coherent. Researchers who study delayed disclosure in assault cases have found consistently that survivors often stay quiet for years, sometimes reframing the event in order to survive it emotionally. But coherent explanations and courtroom evidence are not the same thing. That column will be a problem if this case goes further. Then there's the broader pattern that Ruby Rose's post has forced back into public conversation. Multiple people over the years have made public statements describing uncomfortable or boundary-crossing encounters with Katy Perry. A male model who appeared in one of her music videos described being publicly humiliated at a party. A television host from Georgia described an encounter involving unwanted touching and an attempted kiss. A young auditionee on a televised singing competition described a non-consensual kiss that rattled him enough to speak about it to a national newspaper. None of these accusations were treated as a pattern at the time. They were separated by years in different contexts, and they never coalesced into something the public felt obligated to take seriously. Now they are all on the table at the same time, surfaced by the same wave of attention. Each of those accounts, taken alone, might feel like an isolated moment. Lined up together, they describe something more consistent, a repeated willingness to violate other people's physical boundaries, typically in public spaces, typically framed as playful or joking, typically involving people with less power or visibility than Perry at the time. Whether any of it is criminal is a question for courts and prosecutors. Whether it is a pattern is something the public is already deciding. There are 4 forces that will determine where this goes. Ruby Rose holds photographs she says have never been published. If she releases them, the conversation shifts immediately. Katy Perry's legal team holds the decision about whether to file a defamation suit in Australia, a move that could embarrass Rose if she cannot prove her claim in court, but could also expose Perry to a discovery process with unpredictable results. The prosecutors within Victoria's Office of Public Prosecutions hold the decision about whether the evidence Saucett has gathered is sufficient to move toward charges. And the witnesses who were in that nightclub in August of 2010, the people who drove them home, who worked the door, who staffed the VIP section, hold memories of a night that the entire world now wants to understand. There is no video footage. The nightclub itself closed its doors permanently in January 2026, just 3 months before any of this became public. Surveillance recordings from 16 years ago are long gone. Instagram did not exist when this allegedly happened. The event took place in the narrow gap between the old world of celebrity nightlife and the new world, where everything is photographed and posted in real time. What remains is human memory, one old magazine column, and whatever photographs Ruby Rose has been holding for 16 years. Katy Perry's only personal communication during the entire crisis was an Instagram story, posting the cover of a 2013 ballad with the words, "I love you" written over it. No statement, no denial in her own voice. Just a song whose lyrics contained the line, "The truth will set you free." Whether that was a message to her fans, to God, to Rose, or to no one in particular, it is the only thing she has said that felt personal. Everything else has been routed through representatives. That silence has a weight to it. It tells you something about how seriously her team is treating this, not as a PR problem to be managed with a press release, but as a legal situation that requires extreme care. When powerful people stop speaking in their own voice, it usually means the stakes have gotten too high for spontaneity. The year is still early. The investigation is still open. None of the 4 people holding cards have played them yet. But the picture being assembled, piece by piece, is not a flattering one. And for a pop star who spent 15 years building an image of invincibility, the cracks are now visible from a long way off.